Awesome. We are all set up and we are recording. So if you don't want your image recorded, just go ahead and make sure to turn your camera off. Huge shout out to Cece for being here today.
Yes.
Oh, looks like we've got one other person who just joined us. So thanks for joining us today. We're going to be doing part 2 of building your narrative and talking about writing for fellowships, jobs, and grad school. Before we get started, we will go ahead and introduce ourselves. So I am Hayden Todd. I'm one of the Career and Fellowship Advisors in the Center for Life Beyond Reed.
Yep. And I am Shania Siren. I'm also one of the Career and Fellowship Advisors for the CLBR.
Awesome. So today we're going to be covering a handful of things, and we're just going to start with a review of the definition of a personal statement, as well as the components of a personal statement, which we went over in the first presentation. If you haven't seen that, you can check that out on our YouTube channel. In addition to that, we're going to work on creating a personal statement outline and drafting a one-page personal statement.
So if you remember from the first session, the personal statement is a written document that details your personal narrative and oftentimes is submitted as part of the application process. So it's really a chance for you to expand on your personal history and put that into words.
So a little bit about the purpose of the statement. It's something that you're going to see across the board in grad school applications, oftentimes in fellowship applications. And so that you have a better sense of what the purpose of it is it is really a crossover between your narrative, so your experiences, what you're interested in, the kind of person you are, and an overlap between that and the opportunity itself. So that could be the fellowship, that could be the grad school, and then the intersection of those two things is what's going to show up, hopefully, in your personal statement. It gives an admissions team or a selection committee an opportunity to get to know you as a person. So oftentimes the rest of the documents that are going to be in your application is going to be your resume or CV and your transcript. And those things don't really tell us a lot about you as a person. They tell us some things about you academically and potentially some things that you've done outside of the academics, but it doesn't tell us a lot about you and your experiences and what you're hoping to gain from opportunities. And your personal statement is a place where all of those things will be able to shine, and you get an opportunity to really humanize your application materials.
Great. And so the building blocks for developing this sort of statement include the intentions of the program, your catalyst, and stepping stones. So really starting to think through what is the purpose of the program or the funding that you're looking at? What are their intentions? What are their goals for those that apply? And then considering ways that you can think through, when was your catalyst? When did you realize that you were interested or passionate about this thing? That also connects back to this program. And then what were the stepping stones? What were you doing at different points along the way to pursue this goal that has ultimately led to you applying to this program? And how are you able to demonstrate that the things that you're pursuing, the stepping stones that you've created for yourself, also align and are connected to the program that you have now found and are applying to?
Awesome. Before we move on from this part, Cece or Abby, do either of you have any questions just about an overview of what the personal statement is or how it's used in the application process? You can feel free to either unmute yourself or drop that in the chat, either or.
I'll pull the chat up really quick. Yeah, we went over that pretty quickly. So if anyone would like any further detail. Abby said, it's great. And so thank you. I guess we'll go ahead and move on.
Perfect. So what we are going to do now is we are going to be using a pretty broad and general prompt. It's actually pulled directly from the Fulbright website about writing a personal statement. We're going to use this to think about putting together an outline and then ultimately drafting a one-page product. Shania, while I go over the prompt, could you share with them the worksheet?
Yeah, let me pull that up.
Yeah, it should be in the shared drive.
Awesome.
So the statement should be a one-page narrative that provides a picture of yourself as an individual. It should deal with your personal history, family background, influences on your intellectual development, and the educational, professional, and cultural opportunities, or lack of them, to which you have been exposed, and the ways in which these experiences have affected you and your personal growth. Include your special interests and abilities, career plans, and life goals, etc. So, as you can see through this prompt, oftentimes personal statements are really broad. They don't give you a huge amount of direction as to where to go. So what we're going to do now is walk you through the different components that and some questions that'll help guide you as you are putting together an outline. We're going to take a couple minutes per question to start doing some brainstorming about the different pieces that you may put into your own personal statement.
Mhm. And then just a heads up, so I've shared the link to the worksheet in the chat, so it should be accessible. What I would recommend is making a copy of that worksheet for you to save to your own drive.
Yeah, please make a copy before editing it. Otherwise, it'll just change in the master document. Awesome. So first and foremost, what we are going to do is you're going to think about the theme of your personal statement. So the theme of your personal statement may be about a purpose or passion that you would like the audience to know about. Another way to consider the theme may be a thesis for your personal statement. When someone reads the document, what is it that you want them to be walking away with? What should they be learning about you? For the sakes of putting together this outline, because we're using a really broad personal statement, this will also include your sort of decision about what sort of thing you're going to be applying to or writing a personal statement for. So that may be if you're thinking about a particular academic interest you have and really wanting that academic interest to be the theme of your document. So we'll give you just a couple minutes to think about that and brainstorm. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or just shout them out to Shania and I.
Mhm.
Great. And if you could just give a thumbs up or one of those clappy signs if you've had a chance to think of a theme for your document. Wonderful.
How do you do those clappy signs? Oh, I see it. Okay. Great. So hopefully you were able to develop just like a couple ideas and jot them down on the different themes you'd like to pull from your document. And then thinking in terms of the next step, I mentioned this earlier, we want to start thinking about what is your catalyst. So when you're thinking about drafting your prompt, you want to think of like, what is the moment or experience that really spurred this passion of yours? That's really going to help us understand like why these themes matter. When did they begin to matter? And so your catalyst is a really good way to help ground your personal statement in like this moment in which you realized you really cared about X, or this moment in which somebody taught you something that really helped you realize that like you wanted to learn more about it. And so take some time to really think through, and this is, I think, a really challenging one because you have to take some time to like look back on your past and like really realize like when did I become passionate about X? And like what did that moment look like for me, right? So this may be a little bit more of a challenge. And so take some time to think back on what your catalyst might be and how you might describe that to someone. And then we want to give them like 2 or 3 minutes. Cool. So we'll call you back in 2 or 3 minutes.
That's a really good question, Abby. So Abby dropped in the chat. What if it's so trivial or long ago that you don't really remember the exact moment? Should we think of something that came along the way and not necessarily the very beginning of that passion? Absolutely. There's definitely, we're not holding you to like the very first, especially if it's something like, say you want to become a doctor. I'm not going to be like, when was the very, very first time that you had this inkling or thought that you wanted to care for other people? That could be something, it could be something that happened in high school. It could be an experience that you had volunteering while you were in college, just something that feels like really, it could either have spurred or sort of cemented that that's really the thing that you wanted to be doing, continued that interest. It does not have to be like at the beginning of that interest. Absolutely. That's a good question, Abby.
I guess I also have a question on like describing my catalyst. So I know like in every part of the personal statement, I cannot get like too informal or too personal. But in terms of like this, because I am going to tell like a perhaps a little bit personal story. For example, if I want to talk about like my experience studying AP psychology in high school, would that be too personal or like that could be appropriate?
You're on mute.
It sounds like what you described probably isn't too personal. I would say, and Hayden does a really good job of describing like what is the line for too personal, but like if it's something that you wouldn't want you wouldn't want to talk about in an interview or a face-to-face conversation, like potentially like if you're submitting your personal statement for a fellowship or for grad school, and you would be uncomfortable talking about anything in that statement because it's too personal to somebody in person or like to someone on an admissions team or review board, then it's probably too personal to have in the statement. Because anything you put in your application is fair game for someone to interview you about. Does that help kind of give clarity to like where the line is for something being too personal? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, that does. Thank you.
I would just add to that piece too that you really want to be thinking about, does it help further the story, right? Like oftentimes we'll get questions about like, should I disclose this about myself? Whether that be, you know, a learning disability or I come from a marginalized community. And I would never want to tell someone like, no, don't put that information in there. It really has to do like, does it help make the point? Because at the end of the day, a personal statement is still a persuasive essay. We're trying to teach and convince the reader of something. And mostly that's, please accept me into your program because I'm great. And so does it help further that story? If not, then it's probably just not the appropriate place for it because it doesn't serve a purpose.
Thank you.
Mhm. Cool. So we have come up on 3 minutes. Do you two want a little bit more time? You can throw like the confetti if you want more time.
I'm sorry. I need more of these little emote. I need more of these options.
Yeah. Confetti if you want more time, and just a thumbs up if you're ready to move to the next prompt.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you. Cool. So next what we're going to do is dive into your experiences. And this is going to be two-pronged. So first it's about in the past, how did you pursue your interest in X? So that's going to be the theme that you stated at the beginning. What did you learn? And then presently, what are you doing to continue exploring that passion, interest, theme? What opportunities have you taken advantage of to continue to do that, either in the classroom or outside of the classroom? You don't want to get to a place where you just have this super long list and what you've done is just reiterated your resume. So that's not what we're looking for. We're really looking for the highlights. What are things that really exemplify both your skills and character in this space? So again, we'll give you a few minutes to brainstorm a couple of ideas.
Mm-hmm. And I would add, it does not have to be like all of your experiences ever, because I think sometimes with personal statements, we want to include all the awesome things about us, which is totally fair. But sometimes it's better and stronger if you choose one or two examples that you can really drill down into and add a lot of detail and context to. So I would definitely think through like your two strongest experiences that connect back to your catalyst and your theme that you can add potentially a lot of context and information about.
the timer.
All right.
Are you ready to move forward to the next prompt? We just got one more.
Yeah.
I see 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up. Wonderful.
Let's do it.
Thank you much.
So, well, let me move I got all these like screens in my way here. So thinking through the next is going to be thinking about your future. So how do you intend to pursue X in the future? How are you going to speak to the audience in a way that really shows us, like, now that you've demonstrated your catalyst and how you realize what your interests are, and then subsequently what you've done in the past and present to pursue your interests through these experiences you had. Um, how are you going to continue this in the future? What are your goals looking forward that really connect back to your experiences and skills that you've developed? And being able to really help us see, potentially if you're applying to grad school or you were applying to a fellowship, how the fellowship or grad school really fits into your future goals, right? And so now you're starting to help us envision like your future stepping stones, and really see like the trajectory of how your skills and experiences are going to help you get there. And so I think this part can also be a little bit challenging because it means you have to kind of like envision the future in a way. And so starting to think through how you might be able to pull out some of these skills from your experience section, and really connect the skills and like, my skills in research will prepare me to go into a PhD program in blank, right? And really starting to help the reader connect how the skills you've developed are perfectly aligned for your future goals. And then let me know if any of that did not make sense, and I'm happy to expand and explain. Hayden, did you set another timer? Okay, cool. Thank you. It looks like Abby said, I guess this would depend on the program or fellowship type, but should it be more specific steps you want to take or like a little more general areas you want to explore? That totally makes sense. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think if you have an idea of like the steps that need to happen to get to your goal, then you may want to present it like that. Keeping in mind that like not everybody's future aspirations and goals are really like, oriented around like stepping stones that they'd have to take. So I think with whatever goal or future aspirations you have in mind, present it in a way that I think makes the most sense to you logically. And I think also, keeping in mind this is a draft. So if you just have like general ideas of what you're hoping to do, that's okay too. But then give us an idea of like how, if you don't know like the steps quite yet, maybe an idea of at least how you've been working to prepare yourself to one day pursue that goal, right? So maybe it's not focused so much on the steps you're going to take, but the preparation you've done up until now to make that leap into the next future phase of whatever you'll do. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool.
Perfect. Just a few more seconds to wrap up that one, unless y'all need some more time. Wonderful. Are you both ready to move forward? Perfect. Okay. So now we're going to do the really, really fun stuff. And this is probably something that you've already started doing. So now we're just going to think about putting it all together into one document. And sometimes that can be more difficult than you think, right? To start weaving together these different pieces. And that's really where that theme comes into play. You're really wanting to make sure that you've thought about, again, what is it that you want the reader to take away from this document, and making sure that each piece that you put in there is really a building block towards that. And it serves a purpose, particularly when you're thinking about a one-page document. That's not a lot of space. And so you do have to be concise as well as like still broad and giving enough information that it makes sense. So what we're going to do now is take about 10 minutes to work on putting that together. We're then going to break into pairs, which actually works well because there's two of you. So we can take some time to review and give feedback on those documents. And so right now it's just 10 minutes. Don't worry about like grammatical errors and things like that. We're not expecting any sort of perfection. And then I will call you back after the end of 10 minutes. Perfect. And then Cece and Abby, are you feeling ready to move forward? We've just got about 13 minutes left in the presentation, so I want to make sure that you both get a chance to get a little bit of feedback. Perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is partner review. Since there's two of you and there's two of us, this is perfect. So if you want to go ahead and share your documents with both Shania and I, what we can do is go into, one pair can go into a breakout room and one will stay in the main room. And then we'll be able to give you some feedback and just kind of talk through what you have so far. I will go ahead and stop the recording.
And then you're the host, so you're the one that's